A pair of giants meet in Atlanta for the SEC championship as Georgia and Texas prepare to do battle. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Bulldogs and the Longhorns. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. It's for all the marbles in Atlanta, Georgia, as the Texas Longhorns, which in year one of the SEC appear in their first SEC championship, take on a familiar face. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs look to add another SEC title to their belt. The two-do battle at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And, of course, college football playoff seeding is on the line. But more importantly, gentlemen, as we know, the pride in winning an SEC title has gone nowhere, even in an expanded college football playoff. I am Chris Phillips. He is Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. Gentlemen, appreciate you taking the time and really excited to talk this SEC championship showdown with you.
Yeah, I'm fired up about it too. We talked a little bit off air that it's not like a win or go home. I mean, both these teams are going to be in the college football playoff, deservingly so. But it doesn't have, and I think a lot of people kind of predicted this. I changed mine. I think I had this initially in our preseason magazine, and then after media days, I switched it to Texas or to Georgia and Ole Miss, I do believe. So I had one of them. So me and Bear are in the same boat from moving on. At least I moved up Ole Miss after, so I was wrong from that perspective. But I think this one, I mean, I've always embraced the SEC championship game for whatever. This is the first year, probably, at least to me, just calling it special, it doesn't have the same juice. But I think being from the Southeast, going to numerous SEC championship games, I never played in one, not as a player, but on any staff. I was in the SEC championship. Unfortunately, that's one of my few regrets. Never playing one on any staff that we're in. We're games away, but never played in one. But just having memories going with my dad and stuff, the 08 SEC championship game, that was the first SEC championship game that I remember was kind of it was a semifinal game. It was Florida. The year they lost to Ole Miss, had one loss with Tim Tebow, and he was just willing them to victories. It was Nick Saban's second Alabama team. They were undefeated. Winner was going to Miami to play either Oklahoma or Texas that year. They kind of had a tiebreaker in the Big 12 late in that year. Oklahoma ended up getting it. But that was, I remember just the allure of that game. It kind of like, damn, we were still in the BCS era. And it was just kind of like, that's big time going to the 2012 SEC championship game. Bama, Georgia as a student. The 09 one, Bama beat Florida. There's just a lot of juice. Just growing up as a kid, I remember just going to my dad's friend's house and watching this stuff. And I just like, if you grew up around the SEC championship game, the game Roy Kramer created that he got a ton of hell for back in 1992, it almost left the league out. It's got a lot of juice. Overall, though, phenomenal event. I think this year we're just playing for seeding and a title, but whenever a championship's on the line, two competitors like Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart. And I mentioned Kirby Smart mentions it every chance he gets. At like, hey, man, I'm from the Southeast. I played at Georgia. From the state of Georgia. I know what this game means. We're going to go play for it. Maybe behind closed doors, he's saying he'd like them to be on the mend a little bit. But, they're out. Once the ball gets rolling for those 60 minutes, there's a championship on the line. Let's go win it.
I'm not going to waste a lot of time. Two teams we expected to be good. Two teams we expected to be at least in the conversation for a national championship, doing battle for 60 minutes. A rematch from the 40 acres down in Bulldog territory in Atlanta, Georgia. And God bless Kirby Smart to see that Sunday morning line, because lo and behold, despite a 15-point win on the road, Texas is favored by 2.5 points. So let's see if Texas can live up to the expectation now that they're playing down in the ATL in a matchup to where this is for all the marbles. You want bragging rights? You want to prove that you belong in the SEC? You want to shut the doubters up? You shut me up because I've never doubted Texas. Never was going to doubt Texas. Never thought I should doubt Texas because you lost to a Georgia team with its back against the wall. But you want to shut up the public eye? You want to shut up people that are still saying that Texas hasn't, quote unquote, done enough with the resume? Yeah, you do so by going into their backyard and beating the crap out of them.
A lot on the line in Atlanta, Georgia, boys. Again, 4:00 p.m. Eastern time kickoff on ABC there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Cole, you just mentioned Texas is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 49 total points. Texas leads the all-time series 4-2. And, of course, you just mentioned The last meeting was just a month or so ago when they met in the 40 acres. Georgia won that football game by a final score of 30-15. We'll talk about that one more in a second, how it impacts this one. Dave, I want to go back to something you said as we break down this game, though. I think something that's going to get talked about a lot, and I understand it, right? And I'm not calling you a casual, but for the casuals out there, this game doesn't matter. They're both in the playoff. Who cares? Dave, to me, that's the biggest bunch of baloney ever. Like, it's a nice talking point for us, I guess, throughout the week. Does the game matter? This game matters to the two teams suiting up. Like, you're not playing in this game half-ass.
Kirby Smart really doesn't have as many SEC championships as he probably would like. I mean, he's lost a lot.
I believe in years past, even when they've won the national title, and I think one of those years they won the title but lost to Bama. Yeah. That was the thing he was talking about, that he was upset about, that we should have another ring. I mean, again, going back a few weeks when I was in Athens talking to our good friend, used to work at Georgia. He even mentioned that we were talking about this very topic. I'm glad this came up. We were talking about Dave and Cole, that very thing, where for Kirby, it was like, we won the national title, but he was pissed about not getting that SEC championship. He was like, I should have another ring. We should have another one.
He only has two, 17 and 22, I think.
Yeah.
Because he lost to Bama 18, didn't play in it in 19. Or no, he did play. Lost to LSU in them in 19. He's lost in this game a decent bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at it from that perspective. For Kirby Smart in Georgia, and I will say this, I don't think, with that being said, I don't think either team obviously is going to do anything that, like, if they've got a guy that's, I don't know, 60, 70%.
Kelvin Banks would be interesting. I think
if they play him, they could re-injure him. He could be out. Like, you got to be strategic with stuff like that. But the whole narrative that, like, the game doesn't matter and it's just like, oh, neither side's going to care because they're already in. Kirby Smart in Georgia, I don't question the motivation. And then you think about Steve Sarkisian and company. Guys, they have a chance to win the SEC championship in year one in the league. I mean,
they're also playing a team that beat their ass on their own home field too. I mean, right. From a personal pride competitor standpoint, I don't really care what we're playing for, guys. These guys kicked our ass about a month and a half ago. We got a chance to go get revenge.
I don't even care about that. I think it's more so about what has everyone said for the last 2 years. I mean, think about it. Back in July of 2022, when it was announced that Texas and Oklahoma were going to be joining the conference, everyone said, you're going to have to be welcomed into SEC territory. You're going to have to be welcome. You're going to learn today what SEC football is all about, son. You're going to learn how you're going to have to be able to hold your own. And then everyone has then started talking about the schedule and how they played against Kentucky and how they played against Mississippi State and how Florida didn't have DJ Lagway. So that affected the outcome of the game, which it did. I'm not saying it didn't, but still. Then we throw in Oklahoma, and then we throw in Georgia's the only real test that you went up against. There's people still today that are trying to find excuses for Texas being shut out offensively in the second half of the Lone Star Showdown. Like, that's not one of the biggest rivalries that we have welcomed back into our lives in 13 years. They're sick of it. Like, do you understand how easy it would be to tell everyone to shut the hell up when you go into Georgia's backyard, regardless if it's a neutral site or not? It's closer to Athens than it is to Austin. That's just a guaranteed fact. And you be able to learn from your mistakes, recoup, rebalance, and deliver a performance to where there is no doubt. You are one of the 12 best teams in the college football playoff, but you are the new standard alongside Georgia. You're sharing that pedigree of, if you want to beat us, you're beating the best. They want to set that tone. They don't give a crap that they're all about it being in the Big 12 of the SEC. Guys, Oklahoma ran the Big 12. People seem to forget about that because of recency bias. Oklahoma ran the Big 12, and that was a souring taste for Texas. They want to be able to say, congratulations on what you did in the last league. Welcome to the big boy league. We're going to run this now.
Yeah, I think it's just important, again, to tackle that you're going to hear people this week, for those tuned in, saying that, or downplaying, I guess, the importance of this game. To your point, Dave, especially, you grew up around this league and in the SEC. This game matters. I mean, there's just the pride in this conference. You want to be able to say we're the, no pun intended, top dog, or we run the conference, or what have you. This game is really, really, really important. College football playoff aside, it kind of reminds me of rivalry week, where, again, you don't even really need the postseason implications, whatever. There's a significant trophy on the line here. To say you won the SEC championship still means a lot. I don't care how expanded the college football playoff is. Guys, something else you're going to hear all week, and I think it is worth talking about. You know, the old adage is, it's hard to beat a team twice. Georgia won this first matchup 30-15 down on the 40 acres, guys. You might recall it was a game in which Carson Beck had 3 interceptions, but it was Georgia's defense that was the story of the night, gave them a lot of short fields. It wasn't anything wildly impressive offensively by the Dogs, but again, a suffocating defense, a defensive line that made life hell for Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning there for a brief moment. Guys, held Texas to 29 rushing yards in that football game, giving him minus 34 on Quinn for the sacks. But how much does the first matchup and this being second round play into this? Do you buy into the old adage of how hard it is to beat a team twice, or does that not really matter here because of it being Kirby Smart on the Georgia sideline?
I think the difference I think the last 2 weeks, Texas has kind of started to commit to the run a little bit more. I think that was something they were struggling with. And again, they got behind the 8 ball so early in that Georgia game where they had to kind of get out of their own strategy, how they made a quarterback change, obviously, as we saw with Arch. What will be the different game plan there? Obviously, got to get off to a better start. And I mean, odds would say you couldn't start it off worse. So, I mean, I think naturally, I don't think any of us think Georgia's going to get up there like 17-0 lead right off the bat.
Yeah, they were down 23-0 at half for those that forgot. Texas.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's trying to establish that run because I do think you can run on the interior of this Georgia team. I do think you've been able to do that for the past 2 seasons. I think Arch Manning, like I mentioned, has a very good feel for like the inside run game off the read option stuff, where some guys just don't have a real feel for it. I think he kind of has that feel similar to Haynes King. I'm sure they'll go look at a lot. I mean, Steve Sarkisian and them, AJ Milwee and them will go look at that. I think you'd be dumb not to go incorporate that. Now, you're tipping some trends here when he comes in and that's all you run. But again, Arch Manning, we've shown he can do other things as well. I think that's something that's kind of evolved, the kind of their 2 quarterback system that we didn't see a month and a half ago.
I loved the way they used Arch in College Station. I thought that was brilliant.
That's something totally different, Georgia. Yeah. At the very least, you're making Georgia spend a lot of time on that this week. At the very least. Now, another dynamic, Georgia has an extra day. Now, maybe you don't incorporate that. You win 8 overtimes. I don't know. It's probably not the extra day you thought.
Dave, they actually have 2 extra days because there's a travel day for Texas. So consider that as well.
There's a travel day for Georgia too. I mean,
but it's an easier travel. You can go to practice, then go to the 90 minutes up the road to Atlanta if need be. Like it's a little bit different when you're on a plane for 2.5 hours.
Well, the SEC championship travel is different. Like Sark will go travel by himself separately for the conference and stuff.
Still, what I'm going to be really interested in is can Texas not live in 3rd and long? Because of a lot of people, and Dave brought this up, the injury to Calvin Banks is going to have massive implications on this offensive line. He didn't come back in for the second half of the Lone Star Showdown. That's a first-round tackle. That's a guy that is probably the anchor of your offensive line along with Jake Majors at center. He's got the most proven experience. He got worked at times last time these two met up against Michael Williams, against Jalen Walker. He has got to be able to stay on the field if you want Quinn to be able to have success. People were talking about the run game. You can't run the football and say, we only had 27 yards when you give up 7 sacks and 11 tackles for losses. Like at that point, you just got to throw out everything that you got planned for Jaden Blue or Quintavious Weisner or Jarrett Gibson. You just got to throw it out because you have to throw. And the way that you make sure that you're able to establish the run game is by not living in 3rd and long. So I'm going to be really interested in seeing, not just with Arch Manning, how they utilize him, but maybe they set up an up-tempo passing attack early on to where it's 2nd and 3, to where it's a 3rd and 1, to where they actually utilize the ground game as their last resort rather than using the run to establish the pass later on. And that rushing attack of Quinn Ewers is going to be essential because if we did see him, not at 100%, I think that we can all agree we have seen Quinn Ewers getting back to what he was. And keep in mind, that first game that he came back against Georgia, that was his 2nd game in return for the oblique injury. And he was not at full capacity in the Red River Showdown. So it's a shootout. So it's not like that those two things are even come close to comparable. I think even him being able to utilize his legs just to get to the outside, pick up a few yards, evade the 3rd and 11, evade the sack behind the line of scrimmage, the tackle for loss. Just to be able to maneuver and maybe reset the play is going to be really beneficial for Texas in this matchup if they want to win. But that's also an area where Georgia can capitalize because Georgia might be willing to play a spy technique to where maybe it's CJ Allen, maybe it's Smell London, maybe it's somebody else. They're guaranteeing that if he throws the football, they're going to try and jump and maybe bat it up in the air to get that turnover. Turnovers are going to be big in this game. Field position is going to be really big in this game as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that ankle looked pretty good for Quinn on Saturday night, being there in person in College Station. I had a great view of that long run he had down the sideline. And that was my first thought. That ankle's looking pretty good. Guys, you mentioned the running game for Texas, and Dave, I think it's a great point. I mean, you talk about committing to the run game. Trey Wisner with, I think, 33 carries in that game on Saturday. I think it was the most carries by a Texas back since 2018. I mean, I think that's the game plan if you're the Longhorns. I think you've got to stick with the running game here. I think you've got to continue to run the football with Wisner. You found something there with him. Like you mentioned, Dave, I do agree with you. I think you can run the football in the interior of this Georgia defense. I think we've seen that. I mean, we just saw it in the game against Georgia Tech, who did a really good job, obviously, with Haynes King, and they do some different things, obviously. But I think, to your point, guys, if you're Texas, getting off to that better start starts with establishing and setting the tone early, kind of like what you did against a different beast. Georgia's not Texas A&M, but establishing, setting the tone early like you did on both lines of scrimmage, especially offensively, running the football, get yourself in a groove, get Quinn comfortable, and open some things up for your offense.
No, I 100%. And we always talk about Georgia and Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann's defense traditionally under them. They struggled against a lot of teams, but they've struggled against quarterbacks who can make plays with their legs. That's not Quinn Ewers. We obviously saw that in the first game. You're right, Chris. I mean, the brace, the ankle brace looked like it helped him the other day. But I do think they're going to have Arch Manning. We keep talking about it. I think that'll be the key. Not many pocket quarterbacks have just really sat back there and just tore them up. Like, for whatever reason, that's why I think I used to not be like this in quarterback evaluations when I was first starting out. I didn't really like the raw players who could run. Now, I mean, it just adds such a stress on the defense, man. I think Kirby Smart would tell you the same thing. It's like, man, we can draw up the greatest scheme in the world, man, but if that guy just pulls like Lenore Sellers type stuff where it's about to be a 12-yard loss and our guy just misses a tackle and he turns it into an 18-yard gain, it's like, what do you want me to do? And I think that's where it kind of is for that. Against Georgia, you have to steal yards at times. I think you got to, because again, they're so well prepared. And again, their depth isn't what it is. This is probably the worst depth they've had since the 16 team. I think he's even said that. But you have to steal yards at times. That's where Jalen Milroe has been solid against them in the past. A quarterback that can maneuver. I even thought an under-the-radar guy, even 2020, Kyle Trask was really the last guy that was probably in the pocket that kind of torched them. You were kind of like, yeah. And then Bryce Young was a little bit more mobile than people gave him credit for. He could go improvise, pick up some big plays. Quinn Ewers, I don't think he's going to be able to do this just by himself, especially with that bum ankle to some extent. I think they're going to have a good game plan. I think Arch Manning, and again, you mentioned it, Chris, piggybacking off my statement, Trey Wisner in the run game. I think you're going to have to establish on that. And I think off play action, Gunnar Helm, as we talked. But I mean, it's just Isaiah Bond usually has big games against Georgia too, traditionally. So maybe he comes in against with another team and has a big game. I don't know. I feel differently. But the thing I keep coming back to is like, they're not, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll eat crow if I am. They're just, Texas is not going to get off to as bad as a start. You just can't. Even if you aren't playing well, it can't be that bad again.
I think the explosive plays have got to be able to connect in this game. And the 20-yard routes, the 25-yard pickups from Gunnar Helm, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, who still, for my money, is flying under the radar as one of the more underappreciated wide receivers in the SEC this year. They got to connect. Because if you go back and you watch that Georgia Tech game, one thing that really established a consistent balance, besides the physicalness of what you saw on the offensive line for the Yellow Jackets, was their ability to strike deep down the field. You had Singleton catch a 33-yard pass. You watched this Jackson Hayes caught a 16-yard gain. Malik Rutherford had a 24-yard pickup. Isaiah Canton had a 30-yard pickup. So it's the ability to win against this secondary. This secondary ranks 37th nationally in passing defense. That's uncommon for any Georgia team. And Georgia this year, and Dave's brought this up, and I think that it's very clear in the new era of college football, especially with NIL and not wanting to sit and wait to play. Depth is a big deal. The depth of Georgia's secondary, I think, can be very hit and miss at times. And if you allow an explosive play to even a guy like Silas Bolden on a 7-yard route that is just unable to be tackled for a 35-yard pickup, that might be enough for a team like Texas to just get into range for Bert Auburn to capitalize and get some extra points. The ability of what we saw in that Yellow Jackets game, I think, is a good blueprint on how to attack this Georgia secondary, especially when you're living in second and short and you're trying to dial up some plays that maybe catch them off guard. The other thing that's going to be really important, for some reason, guys, Quinn Ewers lived up to expectations in big-time performances. The game against Georgia, the first time around, he was still able to come back and get 2 touchdowns in the second half. We got to give credit there where credit's due. The game against Oklahoma State last year set a Big 12 record. Conference championship, guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. You guys have brought up, where is the big-time moment for Quinn? He beat Nick Saban in the house that he built in Tuscaloosa by 10 points with a 3-touchdown performance when they were a Big 12 squad. So he somehow does live up to the criteria when the pressure is at its finest. I just got to be able to see those deep shots. If there is an ability for 2 or 3 explosive plays with the rushing attack being established, and then you catch them off guard by an Isaiah Bond, by a Silas Bolden, by a Matthew Golden, by a Gunnar Helm, that might be the difference in this game. I agree with Dave. You can't start off this slow. You cannot start off being down by 23 points and think that you're coming back in Atlanta. But I also think that if you're able to just get 1 or 2 big-time shots, you can establish what the game and how the game is going to be dictated. It's on your terms. Because the last thing you want to do is dictate how the game's going to be on Georgia's terms, because if you're making the mental mistakes.
I think you make a good point, Coles. Which group of playmakers do you trust more? And
Yeah.
I mean, I got to go Texas. I mean, I just, with Georgia struggles with the drops and at times it's like they kind of just vanish. I think you have to go Texas with their group of playmakers. I mean, I think as a whole, I would probably trust their offense more. I will say this, guys, and I'll see if you agree. For Texas in the first matchup, you had 49 passing attempts, 27 rushes. I think that has to be flipped in this game. You can't throw the ball 49 times and you're going to win this game. I just don't see it.
Not flipped is the right word, but I think it needs to be more balanced. I think it's more so.
Okay,
You're
fair
talking,
enough.
Like 42 to 38 or something like that probably has to happen. Or 37 to 41, like something along those lines.
Dave, what's your spread on that? What's your ideal for Texas? I mean, I guess 50-50 is in a perfect world, but
Run pass.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I think you need to be 60-40.
Yeah, probably like 65-35. I'm with Cole. I think you do have to get some. I mean, just in football in general, in today's time, you're not going to go have 10 to 12 play drives consistently and stay in third and manageables. I mean, you do have to hit some explosives. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say like 60-40. I think they're going to have to run the football on Saturday. But I'm with Cole. They're going to have to hit some explosives, I think, just to loosen them up. But I've said for the past 2 years, even go back last year, against teams who were capable of running against Georgia, I mean, Alabama won the SEC last year because they ran right down their throats. I mean, there's that clip of Alabama's interior linemen just picking them up and putting them on the ground. Like, it was like, good Lord, I hadn't seen Georgia beat like this since maybe 2016, his first season. But we've seen it with Georgia Tech this past week. If you have a running quarterback and you got to feel like Arch Manning does, I think you can have some success on the ground.
You guys also have to realize that Georgia's giving up 136 yards on the ground per contest. Again, it's not normal when you think of a Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart led defense. They don't give up explosive plays in the open field. They don't miss open field tackles. They're making contact at the line of scrimmage. They've given up 14 rushing touchdowns. It's going to be really interesting to see if Texas can establish the run early on to where they get those explosive plays. The other thing that's going to be critical in this game, and I swear to God, you guys ever seen the movie Friday Night Lights? And Garrett Hedlund's character is getting beat up by his dad, by Tim McGraw, because he fumbled the football. Yeah. Steve Sarkisian has got to tape a football to Jaden Blue's hands, Quintavion Weiser's hands, to Jarrett Gibson's hands, to Quinn Ewers' hands all week, and just start beating the crap out of it. Because of the last thing you can afford to do is in this game, start to establish the run, and then eventually you cough up the football and they're at the 15-yard line. You can't do that. The turnovers and the miscommunication, and it's been a problem this year. It has. Texas fans want to criticize me because I've called out Quinn Ewers for the interceptions at ill-advised times. I'm not saying that the ball wasn't batted. I'm not saying it wasn't a great play by the defense. What I'm saying is it's an ill-advised time turnover. You can't have that in this game. You can't have the ball on the ground if you're Jaden Blue. So tape it, super glue it, stick them in. I don't care what you got to do. Be little giants, like have it on your chest and like kind of fling it out there. Do what you got to do. But you cannot afford to see that football touch the turf.
Guys, on the other side, are we not expecting, at least I'm expecting Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann to be aggressive in this football game. Like I think you got to send the hounds at Quinn Ewers. I really do. I think you got to force the issue, see if you can force him into some mistakes. I mean, to your point, you may give up the big one, but I think back to that first matchup, they were breathing down his neck all night. I mean, I think you got to try to live in his back pocket again.
I think sometimes in these games too, there's always somebody that randomly steps over. It's like again, I've seen him play the production level. And like Amari Nyblack come out of like nowhere in this game, and he's just like, imagine if Texas gets Amari Nyblack rolling in the playoffs.
but do that on the flip side. Imagine if Ben Jurasik finally lives up to expectations for Georgia. I mean, like that's what we're talking about. Both can be explosive. This to me is going to come down to one main thing, and it's come down to the same thing that probably we all knew was going to happen at the end of the day. Which quarterback doesn't make the last mistake? Which one doesn't do it? Because you got to realize, go back to that game against Texas a few weeks ago in Austin. Carson Beck had 3 turnovers. He had 3 interceptions, and they still won by 15 points because of the mistakes made by Texas. And Texas made the last mistake. So whoever makes the last mistake, and it could come in a critical time of the game. 70-yard pick 6 by Carson Beck. Fumble at the 3-yard line by Quinn Ewers on a handoff to Jared Gibson. Bad play call by Steve Sarkisian that leads to Arch Manning kind of forgetting about where he's going to go. I mean, whatever it is, the quarterback that makes the last mistake is the one that's going to probably lose this game.
Cole, isn't it interesting in a game like this? And I think going into the matchup the first time, I think all of us said to some degree, whichever quarterback plays best, like it's a battle of the signal callers who's going to win. I mean, Carson Beck played really badly, and they still won by 2 scores. So
he played worse than Quinn. And that's saying
far worse. He played far worse than Quinn did. I mean, he had no touchdowns, 3 picks, 23 of 41 for 175. I mean, they ran for ETN ran for 3 touchdowns, but I mean, he specifically did not play well. So, you'd love to like oversimplify a game like this. But like, yeah, whichever quarterback plays best is going to win. It's like, well, it didn't work out that way like a month and a half ago. Guys, we haven't talked about it all, though. I think one of the key battles in this game, how does Georgia's offensive front handle a Texas defensive front that I think is one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country, at least playing the best in the country? Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Ant Hill. I mean, those guys, again, seeing them in person, what they did to A&M, just they single-handedly sucked the life out of that stadium and dominated that football game. I was in the end zone where they got the 4th and goal stop. I mean, dominating. They were dominating all night. That's for Georgia, I think, where the battle is going to be won and lost. It's that simple up front in the trenches.
And, guys, they have depth. That's the other thing.
Georgia gets Tate Ratledge back they didn't have in this game.
They did, yeah. But Texas is depth. I mean, that's the scary part. I mean, you're getting guys like Ethan Burke to play 40% of snaps and Colin Simmons to play another 35, and yet you're still having the same dominance.
Guys, is it fair? It's the best defense in college football.
For my money, it is. It's been the best defense
from all 3 levels. Yeah, I would say at all 3 levels for sure. Because like Tennessee's, I think Tennessee's probably a little deeper on the defensive line from up. I think Texas has probably got the better players. But I mean, Tennessee's got 10 dudes on the defensive line that played 100+ snaps. So I mean, they're deep. But I also say Tennessee's injury at the second level, back level. I'd go. I think it's fair for sure.
I think Texas right now not only is playing its best version of defense, I think that they're still waiting to get to that next level. I still think that there is a level that has been untapped. That might be the reason why in bad performances from the offense, you're still able to capitalize. Like, I'm not ready to say that in a 12-team college football playoff, there is one surefire favorite that should hoist up the national title. But if you're going by the narrative, offense wins games, defense wins championships. If an offense like Texas just doesn't make fundamental mistakes, they have a championship caliber defense that could easily hoist up a national title at the end of the day. And they have been playing their best version of football. With that being said, we know what this rushing attack of Georgia can be, especially with a very good offensive line. The offensive line has been hit and miss. It's fully healthy, I think, this year. At this point, it's really, really prominent that they stay healthy. We also have seen Carson Beck kind of turn the corner in his last 2 games. He was really, really good against UMass. He was fantastic and probably the big reason why that they won against Tennessee. In fact, he was the reason why they won against Tennessee. He had 5 touchdowns against Georgia Tech. I mean, you're watching as the version of Carson Beck that was envisioned at the start of the year and the version of Texas defense that people were saying, if they get hot, you don't want to face them. Meeting in a collision course for a shot for a first-round bye. And I don't think a lot of people understand that is 21 days to prep and an extra week of rest. Like, you're rewarded for winning the SEC championship game. Just like you were in the 14 playoff. Just like you were in the BCS championship. You're rewarded for winning this game. Now I want to see who comes out on top.
That being said, guys, let's go ahead and lock in our predictions, our picks. Cole, I'm putting you on the spot. Let's start with you. Texas, Georgia, SEC championship. Who comes out on top in Atlanta?
This is going to be, I think, for my money, the best game of all the conference championships, simply because of people want to see why the SEC remains the most dominant conference in the sport. Because right now, after all the losses that we saw this past weekend, after the upsets we've seen, the close calls in the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12, I don't think that there's an elite team. I don't think that there's an elite conference. What I will say is there is a deep conference. And you're going to see why these are the two finest programs to do battle throughout the weekend. I think Carson Beck delivers a performance to remember. I really do. The way that he has been playing, there's something about hitting your stride at the right time, which is why you got to build stock. We've all said South Carolina is playing its best version of football, which is why there is a case for them to make the college football playoff. It's the same thing for Carson Beck. He is building up stock at the right time to where we are going to see him be able to deliver. Quinn Ewers plays in big-time games. He always does. He always seems to get the best version of himself in performances to remember. And Steve Sarkisian is a lot like Kirby Smart, where it's really hard to beat them twice. You get one over them, congratulations, but it's going to be hard to pull it off a second time. And so now you got to wonder, who comes out on top? That injury to Calvin Banks is something that I'm going to continue to monitor, and it makes this prediction so damn hard for me to make, because I just don't know if you're going to be able to feel comfortable with your offensive line if you don't have an all-American left tackle blindside protecting Quinn Ewers. I think that Quinn Ewers' fundamental mistakes, that could be a problem there. But boys, I am from Texas. And our Texas loyalty runs true. We say that we ride together. When the Alamo happened in 1836, we all went down and we said, we will defend the Lone Star State. That wasn't even a state then. It came in 1845. We defended what was Texas's honor. We crossed that line. We crossed that line to the state borders of Georgia. We crossed that line and proved why the defense delivers a performance to remember. And on a final heave to the back of the end zone, Carson Beck is picked off by Jahdae Barron, the Jim Thorpe Award winner. And I'm going to say that Texas in year one, silence the critics, shuts down the doubters, proves to the world, hey, we know what our schedule was. We don't care. We're Texas. And we have arrived. We're not back. We're here. Give me Texas 34, Georgia 31 final score.
Bears going to the high-scoring game, baby.
I'm going to high-scoring game. I think both quarterbacks deliver a performance.
You got to go in, what about 24 points over the over-under? That'd be impressive.
I'm going to go 34-31.
That was the best defense in the country, Bear. Jeez.
I think Carson Beck delivers a performance, man. I'm telling you. I think this is going to be a quarterback duel to remember in the SEC championship, one that we will be talking about for years.
We have seen some higher-scoring games in the SEC titles at time to time. It can happen. All right, Dave, what do you got?
I mean, I'm a roll with Texas. I mean, I don't feel overly confident in this pick just because you hate picking against Georgia again. But at some point, like, they're just a very inconsistent team this year. It's tough. Cole mentioned it's tough to beat any good team twice. I think Texas's real motivation really outside of, because, I mean, let's be honest. Again, in the trench report area, they want to come in and have a big year in the SEC. But I think the real motivation is, I don't think Sark's harping all week. And guys, they didn't believe in us because it's our first year in the SEC. I think he just can go back a month and a half and just be like, guys, we get another opportunity against a team that came in and kicked your ass in our building. Now we get to go, not in Georgia's, but certainly not in Georgia's building. Georgia struggled in this building before. But you get another opportunity, and that's all athletes really want. Hell, I mean, we could see this game a third time, possibly. But I don't know. I'm with Cole, though. The thing that does worry me is the Kelvin Banks issue because of the injury, because they had in the first game. And that was the best Georgia's pass rush has looked in 2 years. And it hadn't really looked the same since.
Nope.
So it kind of concerns you from that perspective. I don't know. I'm just going to trust the team who has a little bit more of the edge, I think, going into this. I think it's Texas. I think they may, I hate to say it, want it more. I don't know. I don't think it's that. I just think they're going to have the edge. There's a different edge coming to a game where somebody already beat you. It's kind of like that different energy. I'm not going to go as high scoring as Cole in that one. I'm going to go Texas 28-21. I really don't have a great feel either way, but if you're going to make me pick, Sark gets a redo. There's no way in Haiti they start off as slow as they do. And again, as we all talked about, the Texas defense was good in that game. It kept them an opportunity to get back in it late when they were down 8. They just gave up a big 3rd and long that kind of sucked the wind out of them. I'm with you, CP. I think the difference is going to be this is kind of a different Texas offense since they've seen. This is the last time they played Georgia with the two quarterback system. So I think that's going to be something. I think Texas gets to win 28-21. On a confidence 1 through 10 level, I'm probably about at a 5 on that. About 50-50. It could go either way. But I think Texas wins. If you made me pick, I'm going to go there.
Oh, trust me. I already know where you're going.
Oh, my gosh. Here we go again. Oh, my gosh. Man, I hope Kirby's tuned in. I do, because, man, Dave, some of the things you said, the edge not being as fired up. God. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I've wrestled with this pick. I really have. I've wrestled with this pick a lot. And I'm trying not to let the first matchup, because funny enough, guys, I had this game over the summer. I had Georgia, Texas in the SEC title. I had reverse, though. I had Texas winning the regular season game, Georgia winning in the SEC title, getting their revenge. So roles are obviously reversed here in regards to who's trying to get revenge on who. You know, I don't make picks based off what you guys pick, believe it or not. But we sat here about a month and a half ago when we all picked Texas, and we all looked like idiots. We looked like complete fools. That being said, it is hard to beat a team twice. It is. And I think Steve Sarkisian is one of the best coaches in the country. I think they're going to make adjustments from the first game. I said earlier, I trust Texas's group of playmakers more than I trust Georgia's group of. I probably just trust them as a team at this point more from the standpoint of like knowing what I'm going to get. They haven't been great all the time, obviously, but they haven't had the inconsistencies that Georgia has had. I think Texas is going to have a great plan. The Kelvin Banks thing, to your point, is very scary. I think they're going to commit to the run game with Trey Wisner. I think you're going to see Arch Manning incorporated. I think, to your point, Cole, I think Quinn is probably going to play pretty well. I don't think he's going to lose them the football game. I don't know that they're going to score. I don't think they're going to score 34 like you said, but I think he'll play solid, probably well enough to win. But who's that coming down the track? It's Kirby Smart. DNA traits will win out again. It is Kirby motherfucking Smart. And if I got a game like this, you can say Georgia doesn't have the edge. They don't have the motivation. I call BS. I call BS. It's hard to beat a team twice. But when I got Kirby Smart on the sideline, that's the guy I'm going to roll with. And until I see otherwise, guys, Georgia's the kings of the SEC. Until I see otherwise, this is Georgia's conference. They are the kings of this conference. And I think Georgia will make that known again. They will beat Texas again. It will be closer than the first matchup. Texas will get off to a better start. These teams have changed since then. Cole, I think to your point, the way Carson Beck has been playing has been very underplayed the last few weeks. I think Carson Beck is much better than what we saw in that first game. I'm going lower scoring game, but in a coin flip, toss up where the entire country is going to be riding the Longhorns again. Give me Kirby motherfucking Smart to get the job done. Georgia 23, Texas 21. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll be happy to eat crow. I got nothing but love for Texas. I got nothing but love for the Longhorns. But in this spot, I got to ride with Kirby Smart in Georgia, man. I know they've been inconsistent, but if there's a guy that can get this team to play their very best on the biggest stage, we know who that guy is. We saw it already once against this very team. So I'm riding with Georgia. Also, side note, I refuse for all three of us to pick Texas in this.
Yeah.
I refuse. I'm not doing that again. So I'll fall on the sword if needed, but we're not doing that again. So
Chris, you know what's really interesting? If you win, then you and I will finish with the same record in picks this year. If I win, I will be the first to 100 correct picks in 2024. So I'm excited for this.
A lot on the line.
We still got playoffs.
I don't think we don't even know how many teams are going to be in the playoffs at this point.
Well, 12 will be. Certainly 12 will be. Yeah.
Are we picking all the 12? Are we picking all the 12?
Why not? We can do it.
I'm down for that. Whatever.
Screw it. We'll do it. Guys, again, what do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this playing out when Texas and Georgia do battle at Mercedes-Benz Stadium? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.